Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, August 13th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Ball State game in 23 days, the game against Michigan in 107 days. We're sponsored today by our friends at Jeff Ruby's Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed U.S.D.A. prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, I'm joined by Marcus Hartman of BuckeyeInsiders.com. Just got a chance to talk to Ohio State offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, wide receiver Brandon Inniss, and offensive lineman Carson Hinsman. This show, we're going to be focusing on Arthur Smith. I know that is the person that is going to kind of get the most attention from everyone. And also, as Carson Hinsman said, we asked him about, hey, when are you going to have the offensive line decided? And he's like, well, that's not my decision. And it is kind of Arthur Smith's decision. So Arthur Smith was asked about who's going to be the 5, and what did he have to say?
Well, he kind of spoke around it, but he sounded like he's happy with the progress that they're making, and you sort of kind of sussed it out that maybe it sort of sounded like, he praised Austin Seierveld for being able to play 4 positions, which he said is unusual, that you see a lot of those guys, especially because he can not only play inside and out, but both sides of the line. But it made it sound like that he will be at guard and Ian Moore will be at tackle, because he talked about some of the other guys who are interior guys, kind of being extra guys almost, is sort of what he made it sound like. So I think they're happy with what they've seen from Gabe Van Sickle and Josh Padilla, but it sounds more like those guys would be the next option. You want to kind of maybe he was implying that, or if you want to infer that from him, whether or not he meant for you to infer it or not, that was sort of how we took it.
Yeah, I don't want to put any words in his mouth, but I think all camp we've sort of been assuming the most likely outcome is Ian Moore at left tackle, Luke Montgomery at left guard, Carson Hinsman at center, Austin Seierveld at right guard, and Phillip Daniels at right tackle. And the reading between the lines that we did there felt like that was also sort of pointing in that direction. And so, again, nothing final, nothing firm. Should be a scrimmage on Saturday, and sometimes you get through the first scrimmage, and then next Tuesday or so is when they sort of start making some of these decisions and announcing some of that. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was pace. That is, we get asked a lot on our board about offensive line and what's going to happen there. We get asked a lot on the board about pace on the offense last year. And, some not just, playing faster, but also some of the other sort of related pieces that sort of come into the chess match with the defense. What did Arthur Smith have to say about that?
Yeah, tempo was not so much part of the discussion, but Tony actually asked him about Julian saying that he likes to be able to go up to the line of scrimmage now with 2 plays and kind of pick one and as whatever fits what they're doing, which I think is a pretty common NFL thing. And you'll have that in college from time to time, or there's a little nuance to it, or if you've got some automatic checks and things like that. But the upshot of that was Tony asked if trying to get the play in faster, is part of that. That you need to make sure you do that to give him a chance to look at it, and that led to a pretty good, probably the most interesting answer that Smith gave, is that he said, well, yeah, you want to get him up to the line of scrimmage, and because you've got to be able to adjust to what the defense is doing, and you don't want to. And this was maybe a little bit of a slip, because Smith did a pretty good job of not saying too much, but he did say, if you're just going on 1 every time, then or actually, I don't think he said the count. The count came up a little bit, but he was more about you'd want to make sure you're not snapping the ball at the end of the play clock every time, because then they're pinning their ears back, which I think is a pretty obvious thing. And so, yes, they're working on kind of having more things going on, more options for the quarterback, more options for the line, so that they're winning that chess match at the line of scrimmage, giving them more, more options, that they're not kind of drawn dead and working from a disadvantage in that standpoint, which I think a lot of people feel like there were times that they were in that situation last year, especially later in the season. Now, Tony asked a follow-up to Art about that, and he said, well, this is not my first interview, and I thought if you were trying to set that question up, I'm going to respectfully not answer that question. I wasn't here, as it were, anyway, but that was all the confirmation that you need, that, I think that changing up the snap count, kind of getting maybe, and he did say, and I noticed, he said, the son of the FedEx founder, he said, well, it's all about logistics. And it's about, making sure the process is all right, that you're in there and doing everything that you can as efficiently as possible. And that in and of itself can be a way that you can develop, try to gain an advantage, both here and in the NFL. I asked if that was a bigger issue in the NFL, and his response was, well, I don't want to disrespect college coaches. There's plenty of good college coaches, which was not really what I was going for. It was more like, well, in the NFL, where there's every game is like the Indiana game and the Miami game, you really got to win on the margins. And I think Ohio State has not necessarily done that at times over the years. And so is that something that it's really more vital in the NFL? Which I think the answer is probably yes. But that's another benefit of hiring an NFL coach.
Yeah, him, Matt Patricia, these are guys who are used to working with minute advantages or trying to overcome small disadvantages. And in a spot now where half the season you're going to have a big talent advantage, that's obviously, you're kind of playing on easy mode, and then you're a little bit used to the other pieces of having to deal with that. One thing that I know that a lot of people have talked about with Arthur Smith is probably bringing more under center to the Ohio State offense this year. It's certainly something we have seen in the practices we've been in. You've seen more of Julian Sayin under center as opposed to being in the shotgun. That's another area where, that could probably help with the snap count a little bit, where you're not doing a silent count or any of that. So what did he have to say about how much are they going to be on under center this year? Is this an exclusive thing? Like, what did he have to say about that?
Well, he was quick to deny the fact that maybe they'll be under center a lot, but in a certain way that meant they probably will be. And he said, well, you never know what we might be doing. We don't want to give it away to our opponents and things like that, which I think that there's little doubt that from what we've seen and what he's done in the past, I think you'll see a lot of that. Well, I think maybe the most and I haven't gone back and listened to it a second time, but I think the most interesting thing that he said was sometimes that's a way to calm everything down and to make sure your fundamentals are in the right place. And he said that's another thing that he's kind of learned with some back and forth with the veteran quarterbacks he's worked with the last few years. And I was kind of thinking in my head, I think Matt Ryan was probably normally an under center guy, but Russell Wilson played in the shotgun a lot. And I'm pretty sure, I think Aaron Rodgers is a guy who is a veteran, old school guy who became more of a shotgun guy, but he's still got that that under center base, which I kind of think the same thing. Listening to Bengals coverage here in the spring, Joe Flacco had a long kind of diatribe about how many good things can happen when you get under center, and he'd be another guy like Aaron Rodgers, who he's been there for the whole era of everybody was under center to everybody was in the shotgun to now it's kind of coming back the other way. And so I thought that was the most interesting thing when he talked about calming things down, sort of making sure the fundamentals are right. Because to me, I think that's what a lot of the, in the shotgun, a lot of guys, you snap them the ball, they look around, and it's easy for the fundamentals to kind of fade, footwork and stuff like that. And if you're old enough to, have kind of gone through and watched how some of these under center stuff is taught, there's certain movements that it has to be a certain way, and your steps have to be a certain way, and that gets you to a certain base, and it just makes you more consistent. And I think that that's what he was kind of referring to. And I think Julian was fine under center last year, but like any other young quarterback, he probably hadn't done it very much before. And so I think you can imagine that that's something that will improve. I mean, I also think you make it harder for the defense. When you're kind of changing what you're doing, it just kind of changes the tempo of the play.
So there you go. Yeah, Julian Sayin does feel like, second year, not only more comfortable under center, more comfortable on everything. This is the first time they've had a returning starting quarterback in a little while. So this is a little bit of a luxury for Ohio State. So there you go. A couple things we learned talking to Ohio State offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. He's an interesting interview. He has been around the block. He is not someone you can trick into saying stuff by any means, but someone who has a little bit of a different view on things than Brian Hartline, for example, last year's offensive coordinator. So I
think Hartline was kind of, honestly, I feel like he was kind of swimming even in the interviews. You could kind of see there was a lot of things going, because Hartline is a guy who is interested in a lot of different things, but he wasn't an offensive guru. He wasn't an expert. He was like learning some of these things and how to implement them at the same time as everybody else. So I think that was a little bit of you could see I don't know if he necessarily was on top of what the plans were at all times. When Arthur Smith is a guy who is an accomplished offensive coordinator and has been a head coach and went back to being a coordinator, so he's even kind of seen the different things that go on with when you're the guy to make the plan, you're the guy who signs off on the plan, and all of those things. So I think that having all that authority, I think, will be a really good thing for him.
All right, well, if you want to hear more from Arthur Smith, we'll have a show with that, some of those clips coming up in the next day or two. We'll also have, if you want to hear Brandon Innes, his full interview, you want to hear Carson Hinsman, his full interview, all that is currently posted on the fall camp thread on the Insiders board at BuckeyeInsiders.com. We're saving some of that stuff for our members this fall. You can find that at BuckeyeInsiders.com. You can sign up for membership now, get access to our whole team of insiders covering the football team, covering recruiting, covering X's and O's, covering basketball, is all at BuckeyeInsiders.com. And thanks again to our friends at Jeff Ruby's Columbus, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.